Greetings folks and welcome to the Electromaker Show. This is your roundup of all things maker and embedded and lovely. And yes, there's been another gap between shows. What can I say? It is winter in Berlin, it's very cold in the Attic of Dreams, and I have 2 children. I have been sick a lot. We also, however, had some exciting stuff happen. We were away. Electromaker were at another conference. We were at the Electronica conference in Munich, and we got some fantastic interviews from there. In fact, if you check on our blog, you'll see there's a bunch of those. We'll do a roundup of all the Electronica stuff on next week's show as well. However, this week we are announcing the winner of the Thingy 53 contest. There are some amazing funding website things, and there's also a couple of new contests that we're starting, and of course some great projects and new products. So without all of that stuff further ado, that's not a sentence, let's just start the show. We are starting this week's show with a couple of projects from the Electromaker website. Now, in recent months, the standard of projects on the Electromaker website has been absolutely incredible, and there are so many that we're going to have to do a dedicated Electromaker community project episode at some point soon. Maybe we'll do that around Christmas time. But for today, here are a couple that really caught my eye recently. Now, this first one is a gesture-controlled soft robot Tentacle, and there's a lot to unpack here, but before we even get started with that, let's just have a look at it in action. So, this is a silicon tentacle that you're seeing in front of you, and on the wrist just here, that is an Arduino Nano BLE sense board that's been made into a 3D printed wrist strap, and as you can see, they are motion controlling the tentacle. Now, what really grabbed me, well, I mean, this is amazing. Let's just start with that. This is a really amazing thing for someone to make, but this is a completely home fabricated project. This is entirely made of 3D printed parts and silicon that you can buy from art stores. And of course, the Arduino board here and the, I think it looks like another Arduino board down there controlling it. I didn't actually see on my first read through what board they're using. The reason I wanted to show you this video here is that essentially this is the project. This one isn't a tutorial. This is just a video that says, like, look how awesome this thing is, but they have provided all of the design files for it, and that's absolutely fine to do. The project space on Electromaker isn't just for tutorials, although we really like it when you tell us how you did things and explain how other people can do it. It's also a place where you can just say, look at this awesome thing that I made, and yeah, this is a really awesome thing. It really is an incredible project. Soft body robotics is a fascinating subject, and this really is a completely homegrown idea, because the way this moves is with pneumatics. It has 3 air pumps, and in fact, actually, if I pull up, so as I mentioned, the design files, by the way, are all here. There's a schematic and a sketch here. There's everything from the watch case on the wrist for the Arduino sense board to the mold for the tentacle. The molds for the tentacles were 3D printed, as well as the case and the base here. So this is something that anyone with an FDM printer could make, which is kind of incredible. It mentions here that they used Dragonskin 10 and EcoFlex 0030. I'm not that well versed in silicon, but from what I can tell from a little bit of Googling, basically this is sort of like decent silicon, and this is really, really good silicon, and as it says here, of course, cost goes down if you just use one kind of silicon. I'm way out of my element when I talk about that. However, if you look at the CAD enclosure, it shows you quite nicely how it works. So this is the tentacle base. Can I make this a bit bigger? I can. And then if I move this around here, essentially you can see there are 3 air pumps here. So the tentacles fit on each one of those. And then, yeah, they're fed from the bottom, and then the air pumps push air through each one of them. And of course, it's the same way that a spring robot works, or a wire robot works. That by keeping the tension right, less tension on one side, more tension on the other, you can bend things. That's how you can get those quite human-looking hands with quite simple servos if you just know what you're doing. This is doing it with air. It is a purely pneumatic system. Anyway, this is a project by Electromaker community member Blight3D28. I will leave a link to it in the description of this video. And if you are someone who is in the know about soft body robotics, let me know in the comments what you think of this, because to me, this is astounding. I mean, coming up from scratch to something that you designed with a 3D printer and then making your own silicon molds, and then adding gesture control to it is just like the, mwah, you know, chef's kiss, cherry on top. What a wonderful project. We're staying on the Electromaker website to look at this Streamdeck Alternative called the Infinite Deck. Now, just before we get into it, a little quick explanation on the off chance that you're not familiar. A Streamdeck is a tool which is designed to be a little bit more than a macro pad. There's various versions of it. Elgato have been famous for making them for years. And as you can see here, it's generally a set of buttons with LCD screens behind them, allowing you to change the icons on those buttons. So as well as the buttons themselves doing different things depending on how you press them, they tend to bring a little more utility than most macro pads in that they can actually do things on the host computer. They have host software which will say, for example, one of the things you can do press a button and it will send a tweet out saying, I am going live on Twitch right now to stream playing video games or whatever, and it will take care of all of that for you. However, these things are not cheap. The Loupedeck Live is a very famous one that a lot of people say is the best. I mean, obviously people argue about this. And this is £200. Elgato Streamdeck Plus, which has, admittedly, is a very nice looking machine. It has a little OLED screen there and a bunch of rotary encoders on it. That is at almost €200. This, however, is a much cheaper alternative. And I mean, isn't it always when you DIY it? But this is actually quite interesting because it's somewhere between a Stream Deck and a macro pad, and that is because of its use of DuckyScript. But we'll get into that in just a moment. The hardware side of this is an ESP32 based development board with a touchscreen built in. This is the MakerFab's ESP32 board. And there are a few different boards around like it, actually. Weirdly enough, I have one on my desk in front of me. This one isn't from MakerFab's, but it's a very similar sort of thing. It is a little board which has an ESP32 attached to it, and it has a touchscreen on the front as well. However, this would take a little bit of work in order to make it do that, because this makes use of the fact that there is an SD card on this the back of this board. So, DSLR DIY is the maker of this project, and they've put together a really thorough video that explains every single part of it. If you head to the link of this video, you can watch that video that they've made and learn all about the Infinite Deck, including how you can get the parts to print your own. I will warn just at this point, however, that this is a little bit different to some of the other projects on the Electromaker website in that the code and everything that you see running in the video isn't available directly here. You can certainly find some of those things. But the rest is paywalled on Buy Me a Coffee, which is similar to Patreon. You get these things for free if you are a member, and you can be a member for as little as $3 a month. This kind of directly supporting makers and creators is something I absolutely support, but by the same token, I feel I do need to tell you if you do need to pay in order to get the things to do the project. But yeah, I find it fascinating that it uses the DuckyScript. Now, if you're not familiar with DuckyScript, let's quickly take a slight tangent. This article from The Verge covers exactly what I want to say far better than I ever will, so I'll also put it in the description of the video. But in short, the rubber ducky is a very famous piece of kit. It looks like a USB drive, but when you plug it into the computer, it will put random keystrokes into that computer by acting like a USB human interface device. It pretends to be a keyboard. Now, in recent years, we've been able to do that quite easily with Arduinos and various different things, so it's not quite as impressive as it was when it first sort of appeared. But it's still a very impressive thing, and there is a new version of it, actually, that I just found this out now. A new version of it, and a new version of DuckyScript, which is the script that sends those key signals to the computer. And if you've ever used AutoHotkey, there are a lot of similarities between DuckyScript and AutoHotkey, except DuckyScript can run from an interface device. It doesn't need to be actually running on the host machine like AutoHotkey, but the principle is very similar. Now, I didn't realize that DuckyScript has come on a lot in recent years. This particular paragraph here, I mean, there's the reference to DuckyScript is here, by the way, and there's a bunch of stuff you can do. You can do functions within DuckyScript now, which is crazy, with conditionals and all this kind of stuff. The last time I looked into this, I don't think that was a thing, but I might be wrong. But yeah, here, Rubber Ducky will enter a target machine. DuckyScript 3 is a feature-rich language letting users write functions, store variables, and use logic flow controls, i.e. if this then that. So, for example, it means it can run to see test if it's plugged into a Windows or Mac machine and conditionally execute code appropriate to each one or disable itself if it's been connected to the wrong target. This is obviously from a hacking perspective. However, that very reasoning makes this a super interesting project. Because once you did set this up for yourself, once you did head to Buy Me a Coffee and support this person, and got all the code, you could then take it a step further. In fact, it does actually show you in this video as you go through how to set up things like, how DuckyScript works and how all of these things fit together. If I remember correctly, I watched this last night. I think most of the scripting that they do with DuckyScript is more on the macropad end than the Stream Deck end, in that it's, if you wanted to say run the Notepad app, it will send a Windows R command and then a Notepad command, and then it will open Notepad for you. Whichever way around you look at it, this is a really interesting project, and the fact that DuckyScript is so much more robust than it was last time I looked at it makes it interesting in and of itself. This is something that, of course, with a lot of work you could do by yourself, but why do that when someone else has done the work for you? And for as little as $3, you can get all of this kind of stuff sent to you, and make your own one. I'll be interested to see what people think of this project, because I know some people get very, very sniffy when things that are released online are paywalled. By the same token, I feel like being a content creator is difficult enough as it is, and many content creators have turned to Patreon because they're not getting money from YouTube advertisement or whatever. Yeah, I certainly will be getting the code for this because I would like to port it to this particular board. It'll be a bit weird because there's no SD card on this board, and see if I can take it a little bit further, and so I can have my own personal little infinite deck for filming this show way easier. The Arduino Uno is sort of a classic development microcontroller board. It sounds weird to talk about kind of classic and retro in this particular field, but it is the truth. It was sort of the first that came out, and it spawned a variety of clones, like this Elgato Uno, which is functionally the same board. And of course, just a reminder to anyone that doesn't know this already, there's nothing wrong with this. They haven't done anything illegal. Arduino is a registered trademark, but from the very start, the Arduino project has been open hardware and software. You could go to the Arduino website, download the schematics of how any of their boards work, and then get it fabricated yourself if you wanted to. A lot of the time it's just a lot easier to just buy an Arduino. But yeah, this came with some starter kit I got some time ago, and it has in here the ATmega 328P chip. Now this is a great starter board, but it is missing one thing that a lot of modern hardware development needs, which is connectivity. Until now. Because there is now, amazingly, a drop-in replacement for the Arduino Uno's DIP chip, which retains the ATmega 328P, although it now has the 328P something else, PB, which is the tiny form factor SMT version of the same chip, and it adds various other functionality. This is a fantastic video from Learn Embedded Systems. We've talked about them many times on this channel. They're a wonderful YouTube channel, which I'm somehow not subscribed to on my alternate account. Let me do that now. By the way, in case you ever wonder, when I'm talking about stuff on the show, someone pointed out, but you're not even subscribed to this person. All of the people that I feature on the show I'm subscribed to on my personal account, but I don't want it cluttered up with all of my personal recommendations and notifications. So this is an old throwaway account that I don't really use anymore, and I use it for the show in order to look at stuff, just so you know. So this is the Jolly module, and it is an ESP82... It is an ESP8285 module put onto a PCB which fits into the DIP slot of an Arduino Uno, as you can see here. And as I mentioned before, here's the SMT version of the 328P. It's a wonderful idea. This video goes through why it exists and what you can do with it, the specifications of it, including a few different projects that you can do with it as well. This one is using a little I2C, or is it SPI, little temperature and pressure sensor, and then sending it to a web dashboard. And again, this in the background, as you can see, this is an Arduino Uno doing it. And this thing actually comes from some decent stock. This project comes from Gianluca Martino, who was actually working with Arduino, was one of the co-founders, if I remember correctly, and worked right up until 2015 with the Arduino team. And this is something that, in their own words, the team wanted to make something that was just a straight drop-in for the Arduino Uno that adds Wi-Fi functionality without having to do anything crazy with it. It is a PCB that fits onto an old Uno board. This video is absolutely worth watching because it gives a better rundown than I'm going to be able to in the short amount of time I can talk about it on the show. And by the way, if you want to get a hold of one of these, there is a link to the documentation here. There's a link to various other things here. I didn't find a direct purchase link for this at the time of looking at this video, which is weird because they did, and I haven't managed to find that link. If you do, please let me know in the comment section below. YouTube might not let you post a comment directly, but if you say, hey Ian, I've got the link, I can get it off you and put it in the description. But I'm sure on the Kickstarter as well, there will be a way to buy one without actually backing the project, which was backed and finished a long time ago. Anyway, that's a lot of waffling, Ian. This video from Learn Embedded Systems is a wonderful look into a crazy idea, adding Wi-Fi functionality to an Arduino Uno by using the DIP package size as a PCB. Although, I don't want to kind of spoil this video, but one of the points that he makes at the end is very, very apt, which is that, yes, you can buy this, but for the price you're going to buy this, you could just get like a less than $1 ESP module that fits into the pins of the Arduino Uno, but that's not really the point, is it? This is a very cool looking little thing, and if you want one, you're just going to get one. Ah, my point precisely. Well, I guess his point precisely. Move on, Ian. We're now going to take a look at a recent Electromaker Educator video. Now, this is a video series and a blog article series from Robin Mitchell. He's someone who's been working with Electromaker for a while to make educational content. You probably recognize his face. He's been on the YouTube channel. He's also been on some of our social media channels at different events. But the Electromaker Educator series are basically explainer videos for people who might be new to it and kind of people like me. I talk a good game, but I'm not an engineer. I taught myself a lot of stuff, and I consider myself very much still an amateur. Robin is an engineer. He has played the game, to continue that weird analogy I started making, and he's also very good at explaining these concepts in a way that is easy to understand. So I'm not going to go through this in massive amounts of detail. The video is fantastically paced. It's definitely worth watching. There's a written version of it here as well. What I like to do when there are both of these things is I have two monitors, and I like to put the video on one screen and have the written version on the other, so I can kind of go back between the two. That's just what I do to get difficult programming concepts into my head, for example. In this case, there's a few things that, no matter where you are really in your journey, if you come from an electronics background or whether you come from a microcontroller background, where the two intersect, things get a little bit weird. So for example, this article will talk about static power versus dynamic power. And again, I may describe this terribly in my one sentence idea, but the static power is just how much power a circuit uses at rest. Dynamic power is how much it uses when it's doing stuff. If you have a microcontroller in your circuit that's sleeping most of the time and then suddenly it wakes up and does a bunch of powerful tasks, you can't say that it uses the same amount of power at rest as it does when it's doing everything else. It's a dynamic thing. Again, not explaining this well, that's why we have Robin. So this is a fantastic set of tips for, in general, bringing down the power consumption of your circuits, but of course, it's aimed towards embedded projects, that's in the title. And I might have mentioned just microcontrollers earlier. This works with microprocessors as well. This works with anything, really. But yes, things like using switch mode power supplies for their efficiency, using larger resistors, disabling unneeded peripherals and devices, something that I never really think about it. There's a whole bunch of peripherals on different microcontrollers, like the ADC, the DAC, the I2C controller, all of this kind of stuff. If you're not using them, then why not disable them? It's something that just doesn't even occur to me half the time because I'm not really thinking about real power savings, but of course this is something that an engineer would think about. The article goes on to talk about removing components from development boards you don't need, like if you don't need an onboard LED that's lit the entire time to show it's on, for example, then just get rid of it, things like that. And also, can you reduce the operating voltage of your microcontroller? A bunch of microcontrollers can run at a much lower operating voltage than you would necessarily run them when they were plugged into a development board. In fact, if you're underclocking a board, you can get away with running, for example, the ATmega 328P, I think can run it as low as 1.8 volts if you're doing very specific things with it. Don't quote me on that, I'm just remembering from back when I was messing around with the raw chips. But this is where stuff gets kind of interesting. One of the best ways that you can start bringing down the power consumption of your project is by logging that power consumption rigorously. And this is where our old friends Nordic come back into the picture because they have the power profiling kit too. And again, this talks about how to, you can reduce the operating frequency, you can use sleep mode, and here are some examples of that being done. It's showing you exactly how it can reduce the power consumption by doing that. Anyhow, this blog article will be linked in the description, and it is not only a well-written blog article in terms of giving full examples of everything and good images and well explained. If you go further down to the bottom here, you will find that there's actual links to each part of the video where you can find what is being quoted in this article. And of course, if you just want to watch the full video itself, it is up here at the top too. But just before we move on, I think this is time to fit in a miniature little competition once again. And that is because this power profiling kit from Nordic is something that Robin loves and thinks is a fantastic bit of kit. I love and I think it's a fantastic bit of kit. I had one of these some time ago that I already gave away. They really are very easy to use, and there's a lot of fantastic free software that comes with it that will allow you to do very fine-grained measurements of current usage in your project. And it just so happens that I have a fresh, unopened power profiling kit 2 right here. And as much as I would be tempted to keep it for myself and give it to myself as an early birthday present, I'm going to give it away. This is one of 2 giveaways that we're doing in this week's show, so I just want to make clear that you can enter both of these giveaways, but when we come to choose the winners of the giveaways, the person who wins the first prize will win just that prize and be taken out of the draw for the second prize. I'm also not going to talk about what the second prize is just yet. I hope that makes sense. But anyway, if you would like to win a Nordic Power Profiling Kit Mark II, all you need to do is go to the comments of this video and tell me what you would like to do with it. What project do you have in mind mind for using a power profiling kit. What is your use case? Also, leave the hashtag PPK2, that's the letter P, the letter P, the letter K, and the number 2, just to keep it simple so we don't get confused with IIs and IIs, number 2. And we will make a draw on next week's show. And just to go over that one more time, if you enter both competitions this week, you will win one prize. And once that one prize winner has been chosen, their name will be taken out of the hat for the second prize. So yeah, you might want to only enter if you only definitely want to get this and end up winning something that you might not want. But we'll reveal what the other prize is later in the show. It is time to announce the winner of the Thingy53 contest that we started on last week's show. Now, in case you didn't see that show or you aren't familiar, this is a little development kit from Nordic Semiconductor, which is based around the NRF5340 system on chip. Now, that is a Bluetooth low energy chip, so it is good for Bluetooth low energy communication. It can also do Zigbee and Thread and all that kind of fun stuff. In fact, there is a fantastic project on the Electromaker website, which I will link in the description of the video, which uses exactly this board along with a few other boards to use Matter over the Thread protocol. Very interesting project. But this box itself is everything you need to get started with both that and with Edge AI. In fact, most of the examples of the Thingy53, including the one that it comes flashed with, that's what I'm trying to say, uses Edge Impulse in order to train a model and to tell whether you're moving it this way, that way. In fact, I showed this video in last week's show, but this video of me doing exactly that in a short video we made for social media, yeah, it's what comes on the board. There's also a battery in here, which I may have already mentioned, and a chock load of sensors. The reason I'm telling you all this is because once I've given this away, I'm actually going to get one of these just for myself, because as a runner, this is exactly what I want. I want to strap one of these to my shoulder or to my leg or whatever. And to make my own little running-based app, because I'm getting a little bit annoyed with my watch. But that is not why we're here right now. We are here to announce the winner of this competition, so let's get down to that right now. And the winner of the Thingy53 contest is Razor Burn. Congratulations, we'll be in touch with you as to how we can get this little development kit out to you. Thank you to everyone who entered the contest. As always, we had a bunch of people in the comments and various other places entering. And just a quick reminder, the way that this is always done is that I gather the contest entries via the hashtags and then stick them into Excel and then do a very boring random search in Excel. I'd love to start doing more interesting ways of choosing prize winners again. In the early shows, I would set things up with Arduino and all that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, time constraints mean that I spend a lot more time talking about things like this than playing with them myself these days, which is a shame. However, Razorburn, congratulations. We'll be in touch with you as to how you can get this. We'll be sending it to you. And there are other competitions happening at other points in this show. So yes, stay tuned for that. But let's get back to the regular show. It is time for Funding Website Things, the part of the show where we look at things on funding websites. And we're starting, as we so often do, on CrowdSupply. Now, if you're not familiar with CrowdSupply, it's more or less Kickstarter, but just for awesome hardware products and ideas. And this fits squarely into that category. This is a Cortex M4F-based Eurorack module that gives you touch control along with pressure sensitivity, and it is from the team that made Bela. And before we go on with this, I want to just give a quick rundown of what the Bela project is, because it's something that I really, really appreciate. So I'm going to try and keep this brief. I'm a massive fan of Bela. I actually met one of the Bela team when we both worked at the same place once, who introduced me to the project, and while I haven't been in touch with any of the team for quite a long time now, I still go to the Bela as my go-to thing to tinker with, because in my opinion, it is the best combination of hardware and a software library for creating sound with microcontrollers that exists. And as you know, if you watch this show, sound and microcontrollers is kind of my thing. It's my favorite thing to look at and talk about. Bela is what happens when a bunch of people at a digital music course at the Queen Mary's University in London get together in the Augmented Instruments Laboratory, I think that's what they call it, and say, what if not only we made our own microcontroller-based or microprocessor-based hardware platform for creating our own instruments that was free of the timing problems that various other ones have, that was easy to use. What if not only we made that, but we made a software library and a series of tutorials and an educational course that's entirely free so that anyone else could do it. And that's where Bela came out of. The product that they sell is one of the best documented things I've ever come across in my life. And the DSP course that they have on their YouTube channel for free is one of the clearest and easiest way to understand digital signal processing in specifically real-time signal processing that I've ever come across. Okay, I hope I explained that well. I hope it wasn't too gushing. If any of the Bela team see this and I've got anything fundamentally wrong, I apologize. Please chastise me in the comment section below. But in short, yes, this is based on the BeagleBone. It has a high-quality audio cape, and there's a bunch of other stuff that they sell already. I mean, they have the Bela boards and the Bela Mini, but they have a bunch of accessories like touch sensors. They have various multi-channel expanders and multiplexers, and modular systems based on the Bela board. And this is where Gliss comes in. Now, I urge you to go to this site and watch the video because they explain it in a way that is far better than I would. It's a beautiful thing to look at. It's a beautiful thing to hear what they do with it. And they do that thing where they kind of show while telling. They tell you what it is while giving great synth examples of it. I'm not going to do that today. All I'm going to do is just dive into the very techie, nerdy side of it, but from a very high level, basically. Essentially, this is a touch strip, but it is also a pressure-sensitive touch strip. And inside it is a Cortex M4F chip, which is running the show and basically allowing you to do various things with it. This is a scalable and expandable signal generator for Eurorack, but even that is a difficult term because it doesn't generate like single pulses or anything like that. You can create custom LFO curves. You can split this thing up and have two things happening at once. You can even play it like a little keyboard. I mean, later on in this video, they show them doing exactly that. They split it up into a 5-note little keyboard, which again is pressure sensitive. And let's not forget another thing that is important. It looks really nice. It just looks really nice. The aesthetics of this are really, really nice. Shouldn't matter, really matters. Anyhow, this is, as you can see, a pre-launch project. It hasn't launched. There's no price for it yet. We don't know how much they need to raise for it. You can put your name in the subscription box here if you would like to know more about the project, which I'm going to do right now. Yes, if you'd like to read more about it, it's all here. At the time of recording this, when I followed to actually look at the board schematics and stuff, they weren't there on the GitHub. I don't know whether they have moved them. With my cursory glance, I couldn't have a look because I wanted to see if they had anything else generating the signals, for example. I am not as familiar with the M4F microcontroller, the STM32 M4F, I should say, microcontroller, to know whether they have, it has a multi-DAC on it or anything like that. However, I am familiar with the Cypress CapSense technology because we did a competition a while ago using Cypress, then Cypress, now Infineon, PSOC6 chips, which had built into their boards some of their really high-quality CapSense stuff, and it really is high quality. The capacitive touch sense that you get from those are a little bit above and beyond some of the cheaper things that you might have come across in different places that can give Cap Touch a bit of a bad reputation, Anyway. Take a look at this if you think it's something that you might be interested in. If you have a Eurorack synthesizer, different ways of playing them and messing with them, I know are a big draw. I don't have a Eurorack setup currently because I'm one of those people that buys the bits in order to make my own and never have the time to actually put it together. But yes, if you like Eurorack, take a look at this. And even if this isn't something you would be interested in, take a look at Bela.io because the Pocket Bela, which is based on the Pocket Beagle, is by far the development kit that has brought me the most joy in the entire time that I have been playing with embedded electronics. Man, that section sounded like I was sponsored by Bela. I'm not sponsored by Bela, by the way. I just really like them. I hope I made that clear. Hey, Bela, if you would like to sponsor me. I'm joking. I'm absolutely joking. I just want to play with making with, microcontrollers. www. www. Moving over to Kickstarter, and we're back with the Inkplate team. Now, we've talked about Inkplate a lot on this show over the years. They started out by repurposing cast-off Amazon ebook displays and putting microprocessors on them so that you could make your own projects out of them. And they've got more and more robust, and they've added color and all this kind of stuff over time. And now they are back with the Inkplate 2, which is a miniaturized version of it. It is a 3-color e-ink display with an ESP32 on the back, and as you are seeing, it is quite a bright and nice-looking display at that. It is a really nice idea, not only because, it's just nice to have such a tiny little thing like that you can work with anywhere. You could have this in your pocket and in the pocket of your laptop bag. You can mess around with it. You could use it as it was just showing there. You could use it as a sort of temperature gauge. I kind of feel like it might be a fun little thing to have as a multi-purpose device. You could plug it into your computer when you're at home just to show you your CPU temp or something like that. I don't know. Or you could just press a button and it turns into a cool name tag. I imagine it would be something that'd be awesome for conventions. But yes, if you are familiar with how Inkplate do their work, it is essentially a powerful MCU, ESP32 in this case, and an e-paper display, which comes with an Arduino library. It's also programmable in MicroPython. It's also directly addressable over serial, which is interesting. You can just attach to either the RxTX pins, or you can attach via USB and just send serial signals over. In fact, I haven't worked out exactly how I would do it yet, but I do sort of have half an idea for coming up with a Python script that would take a kind of image and turning it into serial commands that you could just plug the thing, press a button on the computer, and it would update the thing. Anyway, the only reason that I'm so excited about this is, well, firstly, it is on Kickstarter right now. They've almost reached their goal already. Unsurprisingly, they're looking for 9,572 euros. They now have 8,922 euros with 28 days to go. Yeah, if you would like to get one of them, it's $35 is the price for the Inkplate 2 board. One e-paper board for your project needs. Am I in the way here? Maybe slightly. One e-paper board for your project needs. Shipping cost is not included in the price, blah, 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 usual Kickstarter stuff. And again, I say this every now and again with Kickstarter, and this has got nothing to do with Inkplate per se. With Kickstarter, be sure that you trust a company before you back them. However, we've seen Inkplates before. I have several Inkplates behind me, some of which are going to be given away as prizes in the future. We gave one away as prizes in the past, and they also have had various crowd supply campaigns that have all gone very, very well. So needless to say, I think you can trust this particular Kickstarter. Just every now and again, I feel like the need to throw that out there, because not every Kickstarter is made equal. This one, however, is wonderful. Now, if it feels like I've been rushing through this somewhat, it's because I have. If you'd like to know more about Inkplate 2, you can head to here. You can read everything about it. They come up with a wonderful talk through of how it all works and all the things that you can do with it. And of course, as I say, $35 for one, and $37 for one with the 3D printed enclosure that they come up with as well. But there is, of course, one extra thing here. The fact that I have an Inkplate 2 right here in my hands. In fact, I have had this for just a little while, but I was sworn to secrecy. I haven't been able to actually talk about it yet. But now that it is launched on Kickstarter, I am happy to say that this will be winging its way out to one of you. And the way that this contest is going to work is this contest will be drawn the week that this Kickstarter ends. So we're starting the contest now, and you can enter on this video or any video in the next few weeks. I'll mention it in the coming shows. But yes, when this Kickstarter ends, we're going to give away one of these as a prize. And of course, if you've backed the Kickstarter, it might just mean that you end up getting an extra one for free, I guess. But yes. I only just started playing around with this thing myself. Since I'm going to have this thing until I give it away, I'm going to play with it a bit, which is why I got so excited about the idea about maybe making a Python program that updates this thing over serial, because maybe that's what I'll do in the random 5 minutes I have between putting the kids to bed and going to bed myself over the next month or so. Who knows? But if you would like to try and win the Inkplate 2, you just go into the comment section of this video and say what you would use such a cute 3-color little e-paper display with an ESP32 on the back in a nice plastic 3D printed enclosure just here. But I don't even know if that is 3D printed. It is really quite nice. Oh, I think it is. Getting distracted. Head down to the comments. Tell me what you would do with this. Leave the hashtag Inkplate2, no spaces, just Inkplate, the number 2. And as I said earlier in the show, if you enter the contest both for the PPK2 from Nordic and this, and you win whichever one I draw first, then you're going to only win that one and you'll be taken out of the running for the other one. That isn't to say that if you enter the PPK contest this week and you won it next week, you couldn't then go on the next week's video and then put an Inkplate 2 comment. Yeah, we'll cross those bridges when we get to them. However, we are going to give away this Inkplate 2, and I'm very excited about that. I'm very excited about the fact we're not giving it away for a month, so I might actually get a chance to play with it a bit before we do. Anyway, back to the Kickstarter. I will be leaving a link to this Kickstarter in the description of the video, and you can head there and make pledges yourself. They're very close to reaching their target already, but it is always worth supporting things on Kickstarter, even if they have reached their target, because you're going to get those early bird prices. The early bird price here for Inkplate 2 plus enclosure, just an extra $2 for getting it with the enclosure. It's kind of worth going for, because yeah, they're going to obviously sell the enclosures after the fact, and you could 3D print your own, but then you could just get one that arrives just like this already. This lovely thing, little USB-C port just hiding in there. You know how much I love USB-C. So, Inkplate 2 Kickstarter in the description of this video. We are going to close out this show by looking at a couple of interesting products. The first is a Raspberry Pi form factor board, which does actually have Raspberry Pi hardware on it, but it's not a Raspberry Pi. Well, it is. It's this. It's the EsPiFF board, and it combines an ESP32 module and an RP2040 module in a Raspberry Pi form factor. But of course, it's not a Raspberry Pi. As it says here, straight away, the goal here is to provide a Raspberry Pi for replacement for applications that require high reliability and even 24/7 operation without necessarily needing the processing power and multimedia capabilities of the Broadcom BCM2711 processor. And of course, the other side of it is, depending on how lucky or unlucky you are, you might not be able to get a Raspberry Pi right now, but you will be able to get one of these. It's a really interesting idea, and I feel like it's an idea born out of necessity, and that's what makes this kind of board such an interesting thing. Now, whenever something like this appears... Oh, by the way, we're on the incomparable CNX software. I didn't mention that before. I say this every now and again. CNX software is just among the best sites for finding out hardware-specific product news. They do have a Patreon if you'd like to support them financially. Yes, okay, where was I? Before the inevitable argument begins, why do you have an RP2040 with an ESP32 chip on the same board? Here it says specifically why. The idea here is that the RP2040 is a coprocessor designed specifically to emulate all of the Raspberry Pi's GPIOs on the 40-pin header. And of course, presumably with a little bit of clever tinkering and all this kind of stuff, not only could you emulate those pins, you could use them to do whatever you wanted. I mean, that's the whole point of the PIO system, isn't it? You can turn the PIOs into any kind of peripheral you want, and you have a bunch of those state machines on each. I think what is it? There's something like 2 PIO systems with several state machines on each. I can't remember off the top of my head. I shouldn't try and remember technical things. I mean, if you would like to know the full specs of it, they are here, but it's everything you would kind of want. It has Wi-Fi on board, courtesy of the ESP32. It has Ethernet. It has just the one USB port, but again, this isn't working quite in the same way as a Raspberry Pi would. I'm not sure that you'd necessarily need that much in the way of USB peripherals, and if you really needed to, I'm sure there's a way that you could hack in using some kind of USB expander on it, but again, that's a story for another time. It also has FRAM, which is something we should do a small section on in the show at some point in the future. FRAM is EEPROM's much faster and sleeker cousin, let's put it that way. One thing that I didn't mention at the very start of this thing is this could have quite easily gone in the last section, because this isn't something you can buy now. This is a funding website thing. And in fact, it has a crowd supply page, which is linked here on the CNX software article. That's what I'm going to link in the description of our video. And yeah, as you can see, they've almost already reached their goal of $2,250, which is kind of amazing. So if you would like to find that out, you can head the purchasing link just here. As it mentions here, the reward for a $55 EsPiFF with all of the required... Oh, the only reward is the $55 EsPiFF with all the required cables. So I'm assuming the point is that this is a $55 board. And again, some of you might look at that and say, oh my gosh, you can get ESP development boards for $5. You can get RP2040, yet that's not the point. This particular footprint of a board with all of the ins and outs, with the multiple UART ports, with the Ethernet and the SD card and the... Yeah, $55 for something like this that has a Raspberry Pi form factor and will be compatible with Raspberry Pi hats. It's kind of amazing. I'm kind of hyped about this. I'm doing a lot of like it's very, very cold up here once again. I don't know if you people who've been watching the show for some time might notice that I begin to lose my mind slightly as it gets towards winter in Berlin, because yeah, this is a very cold attic that is far too expensive to heat. So I'm speaking this fast to keep warm. We're going to close out this week's show talking about the Rock 5 Model B. Now, we actually had a hands-on look at this. I didn't get to actually program or play with it or anything, but, you know, I held one in my hands at Electronica, the big conference that we were at just last week. If you're not familiar, Electronica is one of the biggest trade shows in the world for this kind of stuff, for hardware, and we have a load of stuff on our blog right now about it, and this is one of the articles on there. Right here, this is the OKdo releases the Rock 5 Model B SBC, and you might be familiar with the name Rock 5 because it's also marketed as the Raxda Rock 5 Model B. This is a collaboration between the two, as far as I understand. Incidentally, you may have noticed a familiar face as I scrolled through here. This is Stephen Hawes, who is a YouTuber who I am a big fan of, who has created his own pick and place machine, and I wasn't there when a member of our team went to have a walk around and saw Stephen with his pick and place machine. I unfortunately wasn't there, which I'm gutted about. I would have loved to meet Stephen. I've been a fan of his channel for a long time. In short, he has made a completely open source and cheap pick and place machine for doing your own PCBs at home. We'll talk about that in next week's show. I want to give that some props because, yeah, the Lumen version 3 is now out and it's under $2,000 for a home pick and place machine. It's wild. Anyway, got distracted slightly. Rock 5 Model B, a powerful single board computer. Now, what is powerful? Well, you have sort of Raspberry Pi and clones, not at the bottom end of the scale, but powerful-ish single-board computers. Certainly powerful enough to do most of the things you want to do, but when you start moving up into edge AI and artificial intelligence and lots of computer vision stuff and outputting lots of high-quality video and stuff like that, things start to creep up in cost. And of course, if you get to the other end of that scale, you have the Jetson AGX Orin, which is just pound for pound probably the best embedded AI computer that you can buy right now. Of course, it costs around $2,500, but it is. So, what's in between? Well, this is a strong contender now. This is a Rockchip 3588 system on chip. It is dual quad-core, it has a GPU, it can output 8K, allegedly. It has a 4K HDMI input, which is wild. I've never come across an embedded board that has a capture on board. I have a capture card in this computer, but it is a separate PCI slot that fits into this computer for capturing the 4K from this camera. This can capture 4K, probably not at the same frequency, the frame rate as my camera does right here, but it's still a wild addition. And how much does this crazy beast cost? £165, which is wild cheap, I feel. Anyway, we had the chance to actually chat to Raul Hernandez from OKdo. If you would like to see that interview, head to the link in the description of the video. And he gave a nice overview of the board. OKdo have been busy. They've got several rock boards in their range now. In the background here, you'll see that they have carrier boards for the compute module 4, but they also have the thing which is called the Rock CM3, which is confusingly a drop-in replacement for the CM4. And again, it always comes into this kind of thing as to why would you want one of these? Well, it's available right now. I absolutely adore Raspberry Pi, and I'm quite loyal to the brand of Raspberry Pi for someone who's not into brand loyalty. But yes, you can get a CM4 drop-in today from OKdo, which might not have all the same bells and whistles as the CM4 does, but the Raspberry Pi CM4 does, but it'll do the job. Anyway, I will leave a link to this article in the description of the video where you can see me talking to Raul about the OKdo Rock 5 Model B that they've put out in accordance with Raxda. And yes, as I mentioned, we'll come back to Electronica next week and we'll talk about all the different things, including why I am lying in pajamas in a bed in this particular thumbnail right here. That was our show for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for all of the support that you're showing Electromaker. I know that the show itself has been a bit spotty here and there, same with the podcast, and that is just simply down to the fact that we have been very, very busy. We are a very, very small team, and as I said at the start of the show, as someone who relies on speaking on camera or to a microphone, as soon as I get sick, it kind of just cuts down on the amount of stuff I'm able to do, which is a massive shame. But yes, it's been a really exciting year for Electromaker. This isn't the last show of the year. There's going to be a few more. But even at this stage, I would like to say thank you so much to all of our new subscribers. There's a lot of you who are new, but also thank you to the people that have been around since the very start. There are some people that show up in our comment section who have been leaving comments on our videos since the first Electromaker shows that we've been putting out, and they still watch the show every time it comes out. Thank you so much for sticking with me through all this time. This show and Electromaker in general is going from strength to strength, and I feel like next year is going to be a lot of really cool, bigger things happening, but the same kind of things that we always do anyway. I don't want to give anything away in case nothing of it happens. Anyway, this has already been a very long outro. If you are wanting to support the show, subscribe on YouTube, buy stuff in the shop, all of that good stuff. Don't forget we have a Discord. Thank you. Have a safe, fun, and creative week, and I'll see you next time.